Good morning, everybody. I'm back. Adam's been holding the fort up. I was out in Florida this past week and happy to have the Drink Up Live Raw and Real and have our another co-host with us. Roger Lee's going to be stopping by quite often, but we wanted to give an update to Expo West. And both Adam and Roger got to go to Expo West. I was banned. I tried to get in, but I did not get in on my media pass. So maybe next year is the code word. But welcome, Adam. Welcome, Roger.
Thanks, Sam.
Welcome back. Looking forward to learning a little bit about Expo West. Who wants to start?
Well, I just want to say thanks for having me back again. I have half the talent of Adam, but at least I look better than him, so that's why I'm here.
I'll agree to that. I'll agree to that. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I can kick us off. We were just talking about it before we went live. It was my first time, and everybody said like, just prepare yourself for the spectacle. So obviously in your head, like you build it up, and even still, it was bigger than I thought it was going to be. It was bigger than I thought it was going to be, and then I think just the first day, not even of the show, but the day before, where they did all the trainings and stuff, is a shorter version of a story I've been telling. The amount of brands that were there, truly, that were very green, like didn't have a booth, were just walking the show, but like truly that were super green and just looking to learn, really surprised me. And not in like a bad way. I'm glad they were there, but I just didn't expect that as far as the attendance.
Yeah,
That's
so this
awesome.
was this was my either third or fourth Expo West, and I agree with Adam. It is quite a spectacle. I expected it to be busy. I felt like it was busier this year than in the years past, although as I was saying, it actually rained during Expo West, which it does not ever do in Anaheim, California. And I think that took a lot of the people who hang out outside, inside, and it just made everything feel a little more crowded. But I think that actually was a good thing because it sort of centralized all the energy, and I really enjoyed that.
So I'm curious. A couple of things. I'm obviously curious in your key takeaways because I wasn't there. So this is for learning for me, everybody. But what kind of type of brands and categories were there? Like who was Expo? Who goes to Expo West?
So you sort of, in my mind, I divide Expo West into certain sections because it is a huge show, right? You have I wish I can get the what they how they categorize it correctly, but essentially you have the sort of new hot brands area. And Adam, if you recall, that would sort of be that downstairs Hall E area, and also the third floor area, right?
Okay.
Then you have a lot of the bigger brands, and they take up most of the show. A lot of international brands, and then a lot of national brands you've heard of, right? You've got the Perrier's, the California cheese, and national brands you see on every market
So big
shelf.
brands actually show up there. It's not just developing brands. It's everybody goes to this.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I like to speak because I work with a lot of smaller private companies, and we're looking to talk to founders and learn what they're doing, what they're feeling, and how what they're struggling with. We spend more time with the hot young brands, and also sort of seeking out the folks that Adam just talked about, the young brands who don't have a booth but are walking the show to also learn what's on the market and see what's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I should kind of echo that pointer to provide some clarity. Like I'm struggling to even come up with. Hang on, I think I've got a business card. Shout out to Be Amazing. So they do. I saw them because they were showcasing their line of beverages, but they've got food and drinks and snacks and it's shopbeamazing.com. Wonderful woman who's a creative director named Selena Morse was kind enough to let me pick her brain while I stood there and tried stuff. But again, just for me, first time, like you walk the show and you think like, oh, it's Expo, like it's only going to be the biggest of the big. And then, that third floor, like Roger was talking about, like that's where Selena and them were. And I'm like, I mean, again, and it wasn't a 40-foot booth. I mean, it was a very standard, whatever it is, 6 foot, 10 foot, whatever it is. Um, but they had 3 or 4 people working it. They were giving out samples. You're like, oh, okay. So I think it opens your eyes to who's maybe successful enough in the space to be there, right? And then, even, I mean, I ran into a couple people that like, I mean, the picture I posted on LinkedIn of seeing Mark Samuel down the back alley of Hall E, right? Because it
Yeah.
was wall to wall people through every row until you got to the side, and then it was like almost the service row. Like it backed up against the warehouse that they brought everything in from, so it was a little bit quieter. And I saw him walking, and I'm thinking in my head, like, why doesn't he have a booth? Like I see him doing everything under the sun, right? So you had this, it was just, eye-opening for me in terms of the back and forth of like, oh,
Was he
okay,
looking for clients or something? Is that what Mark Samuels does? Or
no idea. So Mark owns, I know him through LinkedIn as the CEO of Unbun. So like protein packed bagels, breads, stuff like that, right? That is not by any means his only endeavor, but and we had, I mean, it was a 10-second interaction because he was clearly making a beeline for somewhere. And I was like, dude, I got to get a picture. And he was, kind enough to stop. So I assume he was there on a recon mission, right? Just like most people were, figuring out who's who in the zoo, what's going on, saying hey to friends. But yeah, I mean, again, it was just surprising to see who had booths and who was walking, not for good or bad reasons, but just, you come with a conception in your head and then you realize like there's more to it than that, right?
what were brands looking for, Roger? What are when they're there? They pay this. I don't even know how much money they paid to be there, but are they looking for investors? Are they looking for consultants? What are brands looking for? What do they get out of this?
Yeah, so let's talk about the cost.
Hmm.
I have not exhibited at a Expo West because I have no need to, but clients will have, they often tell me the booth itself runs somewhere around ten to $12,000, and it can go much higher than that depending on how big of a booth you want, right? But the folks that Adam's talking about in hall in upstairs, the sort of new brands, oftentimes they have a smaller booth, which basically is a tabletop and a backdrop. The founder is manning the booth. They brought their sister, their mom, the brother, the neighbor along to help man the booth because they don't want to pay anybody for it. So these are really small brands and they're, stretching to make every dollar work. So to your point, Sam, they got to try to meet the people they want to meet. And so who are they trying to meet? I did hear a lot of them trying to meet investors, but more importantly, when they come to these shows, they're looking for buyers and retailers. They want to meet the guy who's from Gelson's or from Safeway, right? And try to get on the shelves of the markets. And so everybody has a color coded badge. And so you can tell who are the retailers and who are the buyers. And those are the folks that are the most in demand.
Do retailer and buyers actually go to this place to actually make decisions?
They do because they know that this is where they see a lot of the hot new
Okay.
brands that they might not be able to see anywhere else.
So if you can't get into Safeway or Albertsons or Whole Foods or Gelson's, to your point, the odds are if you're there, you're going to at least get your 2 minutes with them. So you got to put your best foot forward.
You might, yeah, but again, we're talking right when we started how huge this show is. So you've got to really stand out somehow. And that's probably the most difficult part for a brand is just standing out, especially when you're working on a budget. This might be your first show. You've already brought in all your friends to help you man the booth, but you've also got to design the booth, and that costs money too. And to fly out to California, like it's local for me, so it's a very easy trip for me. But if you guys were to have a booth there, right, you guys have to
Mhm.
ship a whole bunch of people and stuff and bring samples, and samples cost money too, right?
Yeah.
So it's a expensive endeavor, but if you find the right buyer, it all pays off.
Was there like an award show or like a competition, different categories like best NA product, best hemp product? Did they do stuff like that while you were
Yeah,
there?
so there were actually several groups that do their own they sort of glom onto Expo West, and they do events around Expo West and have awards around Expo West. One of the award winners, so I'm a part of two groups, I guess, that sort of do that and have events around Expo West. One is the Naturally Network, which I think I spoke about last time I was on the podcast. And I'm actually part of Naturally LA. And so we had our own event. We had a minority showcase, so minority
Okay.
owned business showcase. The other group I'm part of is called Project Potluck, and they're also sort of a person of color group to sort of. I'm very new to this group. I just found out about it this year. And so I went to their lunch, but they're really trying to foster a community of minority owned businesses as well. Try to help them see that everybody's sort of dealing with the same struggles. And so
Yeah.
the more you meet people, the more you network, the better it is for you, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Mhm.
I wish I remember what the actual award was, but one of the companies, I'm gonna have to do a shout out now, Adam. One of the companies I'm very excited about is an El Salvadorian pupusa frozen foods company called Zinca Foods, Xinca, and they actually won an award. And I will say that winning an award is a really great way to sort of stand out in front of in the whole crowd, right? I was talking with Cynthia, who's the owner of Zinca Foods, and she says, yeah, winning that award, really there were buyers that sought her out because of that award. Um, so you wanna if you're a brand, you wanna find out where the awards are, what the awards are, sign up for the awards, and try to at least get like an honorable mention. Even that will help, right?
Guys, they put the award like on the table, or is it announced on the screens?
They do, yeah. So I think the award portion of it was on Tuesday night, which, Adam was sort of mentioning that was the sort of the half day, the beginning day. And the big days were Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So she had her little award on there. But there was also a press release, and kind of everybody kind of knew who the award winners were by the time the show actually started.
So if you're a brand, okay, so like you said, like mom, sister, brother is working this booth, it's $10,000, and you have the cost of going out there, then the cost of actually the material to make the booth. You're probably 25, 30 grand into this thing or more.
Easily.
And you're a small brand. I guess is it so you said it's worth it. I mean,
Of
it's
course,
it's
if
it's
you
worth
can, yeah, if you can stand out enough to find the right buyer, right,
yeah.
then it's worth it because it might be somebody who you would have not otherwise met, right? You don't have the connection to Gelson's, and I apologize if I'm using sort of regional, people because I don't think Gelson's is national, but they're it's kind of a high end natural supermarket here in California,
Yeah.
right? So if you don't know anybody at Gelson's, Expo West might be the best way for you to try to meet somebody from Gelson's, right? So it would definitely pay off if you were able to meet them.
Okay, got it. Well, Adam, what were you finding in terms of category? Like, what was the hot category out there? Let's just talk beverages, if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Also, the food sounds wonderful. Maybe we can get them on the show, Roger, and we can do a co-host with your that call out.
Well, Roger, what was the? I don't think it was that one, but what was the like Southeast Asian or I forget what it was like sesame ice cream or something. You remember what I'm talking about?
There was a black sesame spread.
Yes, that.
Yeah, that was really good.
It was good, but it was a flavor I'd never had before, which at 35 you don't come across a lot, right? So I had to bring that up because you're the only person who's gonna know what the hell I was talking about. No, as far as beverage goes, Sam, I mean it was, and I'm gonna say this with the face that comes with it, and I don't mean it in a bad way. It was a lot. Cannot overstate.
Yeah, so a crowded show of beverages, kind of like when you walk the grocery aisle or liquor store, you see all these beverages. So how do I stand
It
out?
was,
So I was curious who stood out.
yeah, it was a lot of beverage, and it was a lot of functional. I mean, when I was walking with Roger and Marshall, there was and shame on me because I'm blanking on the name of it, but I don't even know if you call it a beverage, but it was like a gel, almost jello in a pouch that had like a little bit of caffeine and like theanine and stuff like that, and it was supposed to be like an energy gel or something,
So if you're a
version.
runner or a biker, you just pop that in after 27 miles and go another 27.
Right, yeah. Um, but it was unique. It was something I hadn't seen before because here in Minnesota, I mean, we see people running all the time. Grandma's is coming up this summer, but it's very syrupy, the
Yeah.
gels, right? Whereas this one again was a little more jello, it was a little more water based. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of functional beverage across.
Was there any hemp-based products there? THC? Was that a crowded
There
sea of products?
there were, but not a
Yeah,
whole lot. And actually, the only one, and Adam, maybe you saw something else, but the only one that I saw actually wasn't in the main show. It was in what they call their innovation tent, and the innovation tent was open. I think again on that first Tuesday where the big show hadn't started yet, and they had a booth outside where they had the drink CBD based, you know, chill out soda and also an energy drink. Now, and I take that back now as I'm thinking about it. There were other gummies that I saw that were, they had the focus version, the energy version, and then the chill out version. And I think that the chill out version might have been CBD based.
Got it. Got it. It's interesting because we get calls all the time late of different cannabis, THC, hemp base. We're even exploring to actually do like, the little packets, right, as an add-on to the beverage
Yeah.
to take to market because I shouldn't say this, I won't say the name, but it doesn't cost that much to make these like little gummies, I guess. It's like really easy to make these products. It's not expensive.
My understanding about the gummies is it's actually very difficult. It's easy to make, but very difficult to ensure that you're getting the correct amount of
to
whatever you're trying to
homogenize.
put in there, the correct amount in each gummy. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Well, that'd probably be anything in beverages too, right? Because you'll see like 10 milligrams, 5 milligrams. How do you really know that you're getting those milligrams? Because you're doing a vat, right? So you're doing everything in a vat and then it comes out of the vat and then you go into the filler, right? So you're going to
Yeah.
fill it to the can line. How do you know you're actually getting that percentage in the can? How does that work? This is an Adam question, maybe.
I was like, I can tell you, it's not a fun answer for brand owners, or it's not a low cost answer. Overages and a shitload of testing, right? A lot of the, so not specific to THC, but actually,
Oh,
I'll
in
pick.
functional beverage, if I have B12 and I have 50 milligrams of whatever, how
So
do you know
again,
you're really getting that in your drink?
so I'll pick on Selena and the Be Amazing team, and I'll call them out, as a shout out. Their product, I don't think had any like the B12s or anything like that in it, but the story remains the same either way because it was a greens beverage. So it had all these juices and vegetable powders and mixes and all very, very healthy, right? Very health forward, low sugar. And I said, "Is this pasteurized?" She goes, "Yeah." And I'm thinking, God, this is gonna taste like old baked, juices and vegetables that have been oxidized and heated because that's typically what happens, right? And I tried it and it was very good. And I said, the reason I wanted her card is I'm impressed. I want to meet, the person on your team who put this together and give them, a round of applause. And she's like, yeah, they put a lot of work into it. It took a lot of R&D, but that's what it comes down to, right? So regardless, I mean, whether it's something simple like a juice or something more involved like maybe a mushroom extract, right?
Yeah.
There's different things you can do for raw materials. So like, for example, if you just go buy very straightforward mushroom powder, there's too much protein in the material itself, and so it's notoriously not very easily soluble.
Well, it's funny you said that because I have mushroom powders and I tried to stir them in my tea and they just kind of float up to the top.
So here's the distinction though, right? So like for example, lion's mane, the active component within lion's mane is called beta glucan. So
Okay.
if you just go get beta glucan, it's going to cost more because you're
Mm.
buying a specific extract, but it's a lot more water soluble, right? So if you're a brand and you're like, oh, I want lion's mane extract in my product, great. Go buy the good shit so it's easier, the solubility is better. Then when you blend it, make sure that it's fully solubilized. Then when you package it, have shelf life testing done because inevitably the heat and time and other things are going to degrade it. And so if you put in a 10% overage to start and you realize, okay, that's good for 6 months, I'm still hitting my label claims, but at 9 months I'm under them. Well, great. Next time put in a 15% overage or whatever, like work the math backwards from there. So
Wow.
it's very breadcrumby in terms of how you get to your sweet spot, depending on your product and your ingredients, but it can be done.
Oh, you should be a speaker at the event so you go for free. I know they had like an education component there. What was that all about? Like there was or a university or something that people like instructors there or something, or what was that?
We should get so Sam, they're local Minnesota folks. We should see about getting Johnny and Asa from Food Ops here on the show. So they were the ones, again, shout out to those guys. They were the ones who gave me my ticket. And yeah, the first day. So again, question that started this rabbit hole was a lot of functional beverage across a bunch of different things. You saw everything from like sort of the standard, L-theanine, B vitamins, stuff like that, like things that we're more used to. You still saw caffeine, but you also saw some caffeine alternatives. You saw mushrooms. You saw I'm trying to think what just a myriad of things, right? But on the Tuesday, so the training piece, the reason I say we should have them on is they would know more about what it actually was and how it was intended to be structured than I would. But from the look of it, it was like every conference room between both hotels, so the Marriott and the Hilton, every conference room had a like panel roundtable back and forth for 6 hours, some lengthy amount of time. Started in the morning, went to the afternoon, and so they would set it up where they'd have 4 or 5 people go up on stage. They would do a panel discussion on like the one I sat through. One of them was artwork changes, and so they would talk about Milton's, for example. I forget the name of the woman, but she was up there and she's like, yeah, like you know we realized several years ago we do consumer surveys and we're like, hey, do you buy Milton's product? And people would say no, and then we'd show them a picture of a Milton's product. They'd be like, oh, I get that at Costco every week. Okay, so we have a brand recognition problem, right? And so they do the panel and everybody would talk, and then they would break everybody out into, it was like 20 tables at like 10 people a table, and they would do roundtable discussions on something that was going on the panel or whoever was hosting that particular table. So like Johnny and Asa at Food Ups had their own table and they were talking about how to know when you're ready to go to a co-packer. Right. But the point of all of this being, right, like there were rough math, right? You think 10 people to a table, 20 tables in a room, it's 200 people a room, call it 15 rooms, it's 3,000 people for a day, right? Like just for the people that can afford it, just for the people, because the educational seminars each had another like $120 price tag, right, to get into those. So yeah, there was I will not sit here and tell you that I know every topic that was discussed through all of those rooms, but I bet Johnny's got a list, and I
Yeah,
know he.
dude, I'm just curious because, like Roger, like when you came on the show a few weeks ago, and you were talking about your services and what you do and what a brand has to prepare for, right? When you were talking to people when you were out about and talking, you said you have these groups you're part of. Are you talking about what your services are to these clients when you're with them and the reason they need to employ your services and your
Yes, sometimes I am. Going to Expo West, there's a few reasons I go. One of them obviously is to prospect for new clients, but the other one is just to see what's out there. So education for myself, right? What's out there? What's hot? What are my clients going to see in the market? I want to see that too, right? I want to see who expect. I have a company that does non-alcoholic wine. Well, I want to see what other non-alcoholic wine companies are out there, right? Things like that. Different snack companies that I work for. I want to see what other snack companies are out there if they're doing things similar to my clients, right? But it's also an opportunity for me to meet with my existing clients that have a booth. But it's also a time for me to meet with other people that I don't get to see during the year, like such as like Adam, right? We got to walk the show a little bit together. Marshall, I see Marshall fairly often,
I
but it was
feel
still
so
good
left
to.
out right now. I feel just really left out, but that's okay.
I see Marshall fairly often.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work together, but it was still good to see and walk with him. And in walking with Adam and Marshall, I can introduce Adam and Marshall to people I know, and they introduce me to people they know that we just kind of come across walking the show, right? And so there's a lot of value in that too.
So the real power of the thing is we always talk about it. We talk about community and networking. Is that the real power of the show? Is to just make those connections with folks in real time?
Absolutely. I would say I collected a stack of cards, right, coming
Okay.
back from Expo West. I'm sure you did too, and also a bag full of snacks.
I got a
But
follow up question on that stack of cards, but keep on going.
Yeah.
but the real value was just you tend to trust people that you're introduced to, not just a random stranger that walks up to you,
Mhm.
right? So those
Right. Well, it's
introductions
like the
really,
LinkedIn DM is like they friend you, then hey, we want to buy my service. I'm like, well, can we meet first? Maybe,
yeah,
but I don't even know who you are.
exactly, yeah. So the Expo West really is a giant networking event. Yeah.
How many cards did you get? In all seriousness, like how many people did you meet?
Oh, I don't even know. So one thing I do also is when I get home, I sort of divide the pile up into the interesting pile and the not so interesting pile. All right.
Hey, everybody, I'm sorry if you're the non-interesting pile to Roger, really, but I mean, come on, he's an attorney. Everybody's interesting to you, right? Because you're just getting the textbook stuff, man.
Well, also the other thing is when I'm visiting these booths, I want to talk to the CFO or the founder, and
Okay.
a lot of times it's the sales director or just a contractor or
Mm.
the mom, right? And the mom might not have a card, but the sales director does. And I'm
Right.
if I were from Gelson's, again, I'm using Gelson's as an example, that card would be interesting to me. But I'm not the buyer. I'm not related to the buyer. I don't represent Gelson's, so that is one of the not interesting cards to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think, and I mean, Roger's spot on. I think it's obviously a massive networking event. I also think like we all know this if you think about it, whatever, hypothetically, but it's just fun. It's fun to see it and again, fun to get a very real sense for like, the Be Amazing that I've called out or the group that had the gel shots or the black sesame treat that Roger and I tasted. Like there were some booths where you'd stop by and it didn't matter who you were talking to. And in some cases, I never knew what their title was, but they were really good at telling a story and getting you excited about their stuff, right? Now, again, I know, nothing about making gel pouch energy, squeeze things, right? But it was like clearly they made an impression. I'm talking about it now, right? Like it was cool, and then you'd stop at other booths and like, I'm gonna say this nicely, but like you'd realize you need to work on your story. Like you need to work on your, you know, like somebody you need to wear a different hat. Somebody else needs to come to these things because you'd be like you spent 20.
Introduced them to Courtney O'Brien. Was Courtney out? Was Courtney out there? I'm assuming she probably. I think she
I
was.
assume so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. But that's the thing is like, you know, you spent $25,000 to be here and like
Right.
you can tell they want to have a conversation, but maybe they're a little green, maybe they don't want to say something and be wrong or whatever, and you just like,
You
okay.
tell them like, hey, when you're talking to these people, like, do you say, hey, look, you need to work on your story, and I can help you. Do you get like that direct or not?
Not that direct, but I like again, I'm picking on her a lot because we had a really good conversation. Selena would be amazing, the greens drink. You know, I was badgering her very politely on ops questions because I was curious, right? She had sparked my interest. And she was like, "Well, what do you do?" Right? And I said, "You know, I'm consultant and I do fractional ops or advising, would be whatever word you want to use." And you
Yeah.
could see her eyes didn't glaze over, but you could see that look of fear in her face and like, oh God, he's gonna try and sell me something, right?
Yeah.
He's gonna try and
Yeah.
sell me on working for us, right?
Well, you were the way we were approaching it at first, and I'm sure Roger, I got some questions on that too. Is maybe it's a series of questions like, do you have a trademark? Whatever. Or what is your trademark? So it's not less threatening, and you just kind of they get them to think about it a little bit. Then maybe they say, "What do you do?" Hey, I'm Roger. This is what I do, and lovely meeting you. Dad. Wish you the best of luck. And then at least you plant that seed. It's like, well, this person really made me think about
Well,
my story, or do I have a trademark, or do I have that is my business properly set up, whatever it may be, right? Or I'm with naturally, what's it called now?
Naturally LA or
that's my
Naturally
network.
Network.
Naturally
Yeah.
LA. Like, hey, I'm happy to connect you with these folks who probably could help you,
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, Roger, I'm sure you do something similar, but I'd be curious how these conversations went for you. Like, I met another guy and his wife who own a hair care line.
They had hair care products out there. I thought this was food and beverages.
They have
He didn't
some
have a
personal
booth,
products. Yeah.
but oh yeah, I mean, consumer packaged goods. Pick your poison, right? So like he didn't have a
Okay.
booth, but he was walking the show. And I told him the same thing I told Selena, the same thing I told several people, like when they would hear consultant and if you could catch it, right? There's a twinge in the eye and you're like, oh hell, they're scared now, right? My immediate response was like, look, if I can help you and we can figure that out and that happens at some later date, obviously cool, right? Like we all got bills to pay. But
Yeah.
also, if I can be a cheerleader from afar, or even better, like if I can introduce you to somebody who can be helpful, great. Like I'm not here to try to insert myself into your business, but we'd all be lying to ourselves if we thought that like we didn't need to know 10 more people and that that wouldn't be useful to us. So like this is me offering that if I can, right? And that was the way I
100%.
chose to approach it. Most people, when I said that, like you could feel a temperature drop and like they got a little more comfortable again.
So here's been my situation when I go to conferences, right? So I'm looking at my stack of cards, right? And most of them don't answer once we reach out. Like, oh yeah, sure, give me a call, the whole bit. About 80% of them don't answer, which is really bizarre to me. So I'm thinking about next time I go, hey, look, I'm gonna exchange cards, but I don't want to exchange cards unless we're really serious about, like, I
Connecting.
don't
Yeah.
waste your time, I don't waste my time. I'm a busy person. Is that too direct? But I mean,
I mean, I don't know,
or
Roger.
maybe when they're ready, they'll eventually answer, right? I can go through these cards and stuff, but it's
I mean, I do something similar to what Adam does. Being a part of Naturally LA, I'm able to speak about it a lot, which I obviously do. So I'm talking about it on this podcast. And that's, I feel like if you come to them and tell them how you can help them rather than how they can help you, that helps. So one of the questions, if they're open to a conversation, one of the things I ask them is like, hey, like, what are you struggling with, right? And
yeah,
maybe what they're struggling with isn't a trademark, isn't a corporate formation, isn't anything corporate, but it's some 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 operations issue. And then I could be like, oh, well, give me a call. I know somebody who can help you. Like, I'm not gonna get anything out of this, but my friend Adam can help you, right? And then they appreciate that connection. But then that also, for me, that brings them into my ecosystem, right? Because I
Yeah.
know that when he's talking with Adam, and he realizes there's some legal issue, Adam's gonna say, oh, well, you should call Roger, right? And that's how it
yeah.
that ends up benefiting me.
And
Here's
that's how we run our company. And Adam knows, I think you do, Rogers. We have partnership companies. Like, we want to put you as a partner because if you need legal advice or operational advice, I don't do that, but you do. And if I can connect those clients to you at a really great entry price, and you can grow with them, which I love because you're a firm that's founded by entrepreneurs, I believe. Right? So I mean, that which I think's brilliant. So we do the same thing. So I do think that's the right approach. Let me switch gears a little bit. So I'm sure people are dying to know is your key takeaways from, I'll start with you, Roger. Like, what were some of the key takeaways from, I know we've been talking about it, but your key takeaways from the
Yeah.
expo?
So sort of riffing on what Adam mentioned earlier, protein and functional everything, drinks, snacks, supplements, everything. And not only functional, but also personalized, which is kind of a new-ish twist on that, I think. We've also seen, and I think a lot of that is driven by social media, quite frankly, to target an audience that's younger than me, younger than Adam, but a good audience to target. One thing that I found interesting that was missing, or I didn't see a lot of, was non-alcoholic beverages. There were a few spirits-based non-alcoholic beverages. And I'm not talking about, the waters but I'm talking about sort of the alternative drinks, right?
Wow.
We've been
I
hearing,
thought, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry. Listen.
in my opinion, we've been hearing so much about these non-alcoholic drinks in the market and how it's such a big booming industry. And for it to be so absent at Expo West, I was a little bit surprised.
That is really surprising to hear because I was expecting the two of you say, we saw all these NA beverages from wine, spirits, a whole bit. Matter of fact, later on this afternoon, I'm dropping my monthly newsletter and I'm doing about the category of NA brands. And, I mean, I'm not saying spirits is going away. I represent spirit brands. We love representing spirit brands. They're doing just fine. But I could tell you, you got to have the NA option
Yeah,
in every facet. And it's fascinating that there wasn't a lot there.
there were a few. Don't get me wrong, there were a few. I expected more. I really did expect more.
Yeah. Well, who were the brands that were there? Do you remember?
So I met a guy, I want to say his name was Marco. He runs the Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association, and I could be getting that name completely
Yeah,
wrong.
Marco. Yep. That's
Okay,
him.
you
Yep.
guys know him?
Yeah.
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 And
He's
so
been on TED Talk too, by the way. Great guy.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we talked a little bit because I'm also very interested in non-alcoholic space, and I've got clients in that space as well. And so
Yeah.
they had a booth, and they had some of their clients with sort of a little section in the back. And so I walked that little area, but that was kind of it, right?
Yeah.
So I really thought there would be more than that.
What were you saying, Adam? Or your
I
key
mean,
takeaways?
it's hard for me to not go back to what I've been telling everybody, which is just I mean this in a nice way, and it's the only word that's popping into my brain right now, but just the ineptitude of a lot of the brands that were there. And again, I don't mean ineptitude as a knock. I don't mean
To
it.
give that example, I was with you and Ryan at lunch a couple weeks ago, and you were talking to me about you were at a table, and
Yeah.
that's a great example, I think, right? So, what is that example that you discovered during the training class, and you were thinking people didn't know the difference between something, and what was that?
Yeah. So uh yep. So it was Tuesday, and I was sitting there with the food ops guys at that kind of panel roundtable I was talking about. And again, I obviously didn't know who everyone in the room was, and so again, I don't call this out to say that like, oh my God, I work in this space. You should know all the things I know. Like that's why I have a job. Like this is not me speaking ill of anyone. Again, I just went to it assuming like if you're spending this amount of money, even just to attend, you have a certain level of foundational knowledge in what you're doing, right? So thank you, baby. Yep, I got you. So I'm sitting at this training or this educational seminar that they're doing. And at our table, again, we're having the co-packer conversation and people are nodding along and they're taking notes. And behind me, I hear a gentleman at the table behind him. He's got his 10 people, we're all doing our thing. I hear him ask, who at this table knows what an MOQ is? And I thought,
Can you tell everybody what an MOQ is, by the way? Because I
sure.
don't know what an MOQ is.
Yeah. So, and minimum order quantity.
I should know that. Okay,
Very
now I
simple
know.
quote, right? And he goes, who here knows what an MOQ is? And I thought, I heard it. And again, he's behind me and I went, I gotta see this. And so I turned around and at a table of 10 people, 3 of them raised their hand. 3 out of 10. At a trade show specifically focused in commercial packaged goods, right? I was like, holy shit. And then he went on to say that it means minimum order quantity. And I'm still looking. I'm sure he thought I was mad dogging him, and I wasn't trying to, right? But I'm still looking. And he goes, it means minimum order quantity. And still probably 3 or 4 people at the table were like, "That doesn't help me. What does that mean?"
So is this like for like packaging, lids,
All
the
of it.
whole bit
Anything.
for
So, like,
okay.
not to totally derail us from Expo, but, like, I think this is my hypothesis, right? I think for some of the very green brand owners, which again, it makes sense if you've never done this before, but you go to the grocery store, you go to wherever, and you think, I need I need a razor, I need a bar of soap, I need a granola bar. I go buy one, right? And you get used to, as a consumer, that being the purchasing relationship, right? And so then you hear minimum order quantity, like, well, my minimum order quantity is just whatever I want. I want one, so that's my minimum. That's my minimum order. No, right? Like, you have to buy 5 of a thing. You have to buy 20 kilograms of a thing. You have to buy a 55-gallon drum of a thing, right? And so it's a super useful conversation, but it just floored me how many people, even at that table, but when you extrapolate that out to the show, how many people were sitting there and standing there and walking around that didn't have that base level, what I consider to be that base level foundational knowledge, which, as someone who sits in my seat doing what I do, I'm like, perfect. There's tons of folks out there that I can help educate. That's great news.
So your takeaway was there's a lot of people there that need to learn, and it's probably a good investment to go to these seminars to actually learn. I'm a new brand. I don't know what MLQ is. Your takeaway, Roger, is like, it was surprising not to see like these NA products that is supposedly a hot category, hotter than hot. That's all. I was just literally not related to Expo West, but I was at the Valspar Golf Championships with a brand called Even. Shout out to Derek. And we tasted 3,000 consumers, and every consumer we talked to, I was there, by the way, so this is true. They all like, hey, yeah, this is such a great option. I need to be more mindful about what I drink, right? So to hear that there was just a small section with Marco, which he's a great ambassador for the category, not being there is really surprising to me.
Uh-huh.
Um, Switching gears, so what would you have liked to, so what was the greatest thing? I'll start with you, Roger. What was the biggest learning that you like from, or you got from the show? One. And then two is, what would you like the show I'd actually bring in the future that was missing?
Mm.
I think the what's missing from the show. The show has so much. I think the show needs more time, or
Yeah,
maybe I need more time.
you're
Not the
right.
show needs more time because what I was there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I actually skipped Friday, but even by the end of Thursday, I was beat. I was done. I had so many snacks and my feet were. I was walked out. My shoes were burned out. And if I'm being completely honest, one of the other we talk about Expo West as a networking event. Um, any trade show I go to, a lot of times the most valuable events I go to are the after trade show events that isn't Expo West, but it's the accounting firm that puts on the evening happy hour, right? And then I go to that and I meet lots of other people who are in the space, maybe not the brand, but other people who work in the space like you guys do, right? Those are a lot of times those events are the most valuable events for me, not necessarily walking the show. All was this is to say on Thursday I was so beat, but I had so many events on Thursday night to attend that I ended up going to my car and taking a half-hour nap to recharge before the evening events.
I've done that before. Just find a corner and just to close your eyes. I don't feel so bad. I thought I was the only one that would do that. I always just disappear for a minute and just get my sea legs back. Because when you talk
Yeah,
all day, man, you lose it. So you would like to have more time. What did and you also, that what you liked about it is these after events that you could go
absolutely.
to and
Yeah,
network. But you found yourself burnt out by you get to the end of the week. What could they do differently to help with that? Or maybe what could you've done differently to better prepare?
there's always a lot of pre-planning involved, and I did a lot of pre-planning for this as well, kind of lining up who I want to meet, who I'm talking to, and honestly, a lot of my quote meetings are my meetings that I similar to meetings I had with Adam, which is let's meet at this hall and let's walk for half an hour together and just kind of chat and see who else we meet, right? So, it's I think it's more incumbent on the person attending the show, right, to kind of make sure you take care of all that so that you're not just kind of showing up to the show empty-handed.
You have to just bring Marshall along because Marshall had this special backpack and the whole
Dude, he was so
process.
prepared. He had the Swiss Army backpack rolling. He had his magnetic name tag. I mean, dude was ready to rock. Yeah, it was great. It was
Well,
great.
well, how about you, Adam? So what was your favorite part about the show, and what would you have liked see done differently?
Yeah, I mean, again, so take my feedback with a grain of salt with it having been my first. So I'm comparing it to, you know, nothing and or maybe other much smaller shows, but I think, the stuff that they did well, there were obviously vendor, the booths, folks had samples and stuff, but I thought there was a good option for water stations, food. Like they tried to make sure, it's 60,000 people or however it was. Like it's huge. I mean, it's a football stadium, right? But they had food trucks and they had bars and they had water and they had coffee. And so like I thought they managed as much as you could in that space. I thought they managed it really well. Obviously the app's super cool, very useful. I thought that was really, all of that was really well done. The only thing that I think maybe this is more on the like individual booth or brand side, but like it still kills me at any show I go to when you go up to a booth and you'll talk to somebody. It's like, oh, you know, give me your card, and it's still a very personal exchange. Which there's nothing wrong with that. Have a conversation, but like, have just a big plexiglass box there. Throw cards in that thing, right? And then just hit like, because inevitably, right? Like your wallet gets full, you throw them in your bag, and like, oh shit, where'd I put that? Right? Like, no, just have a receptacle, right? So, which again, that's more on like the
So if I'm
individual
a
booth
if I'm a
side.
if I'm a brand, have a receptacle. Yeah, throw your card here and got it.
Just
That's a good
just
idea.
something so that it's that and it's less like, oh, I have to hand you something because maybe they're busy, maybe they're talking to people, and you're like, oh, I really want to give them my card, right?
Well, I've
Cool.
been bumping phones. Have you heard about the bump the
Yeah,
phone
yeah, yeah.
thing?
Yeah,
Well, the problem is when you bump the phone, you exchange, you don't remember that you bumped the phone, so then they disappear in this whole sea
correct.
of connects, right?
Yeah.
Or like
Yes.
use my poppy. I'm like, I have no idea if I talked to you last week or the week before, but I bumped the phone. It's really cool. I'll give you
Yes.
a call next week, and then next week comes and I don't call them. True
Yeah.
reality, man.
No, 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 totally. So yeah, so I think, and again, that's less about, not that Expo West is going to enact that, but that's more about individual booths. Just if it were me, that's how I'd do it. And then for them as a whole, I think having like, again, first timer, right? Having something on the outs, like I knew where Hall E was, right?
Yeah.
But like my, had to pull my phone up to figure out what the hell Hall E was gonna be in terms of so like something, it could be very general, but like signage in terms of like, hey, and maybe it was there and I just missed it. That's very possible too, because there was so much to look at. I very possibly missed it. But like, hey, this building is generally gonna be these types of products. That could be very new brands, that could be beverage, that could be
Well, they
food.
didn't do a good job of describing what was in the hall.
I'm not saying they didn't do a good job. I'm saying, and again, it could have been an inequity on my part. I didn't know where to look. There was so much that like I didn't know where to put my attention to figure out like even though I'm on my phone, I mean shit, I wandered Holly for like 20 minutes thinking I was going down the right aisle. Again, wall to wall people before I realized, oh shit, I did the numbers backwards. I need to go that way, right? Don't get me wrong, got my steps in, right? But I was like, same thing with Roger. By the end, I mean, by Thursday, middle of the day, I told you guys this before we started, like my voice was gone, totally gone. Couldn't do it, right? So I mean, Thursday afternoon into Friday, like I met up with a couple people and whispered at them over coffee and beers, but that was all I could do, right? So,
Wow.
I will
so that's
bring
my
up one
takeaway.
other thing. Expo West has been around a very long time, and I'm sure it'll be around much longer too. It has gotten exponentially expensive, it feels like. And with a lot of people I spoke with too, it's become unaffordable for the new brands. And I know we spent this whole hour talking about new brands at Expo West and exciting
Yeah.
brands and all, but they seem to have closed the door on a lot of the new and upcoming brands by becoming so expensive. Not only for service providers coming in, and I get it, they want brands, they want buyers. That's their target audience. Their target audience isn't me, right?
Yeah.
But even my clients that are startup clients, we talk about how expensive it is to go to Expo West now. They can't afford that, right? But Expo West was supposed to be the place for these guys to exhibit. Not necessarily for Procter and Gamble. Like Procter and Gamble, they'll have their ginormous booth that you can walk into, and it's like it's like a whole little house, whole little warehouse showcase.
I love what you said. There needs to be a space for just new brands. I mean, honestly, there just needs to be a space for new brands, and it should be affordable.
Yeah,
So maybe there's an opportunity for us to create that space. I don't know, something to explore for sure, which is tremendous. So you'd like to see more affordability from them?
And can I just bring up my visitor here, my dog? This is how involved in the food and beverage space I am. His name is Whiskey.
Wow. I got whiskey behind me, as you can see.
That's
So,
fantastic.
but that is a brilliant name. I have two Aussies. So one's JJ, Jesse James. Another one is Pumpkin, and they're behind me as well. So they join me every day. And I know you guys have dogs, and you dog sit as well, Adam, right?
Oh yeah, we it's just R2 here right now. It's a pretty chill weekend, but we had Wednesday this week was our busiest day. I think we had 5 here, including R2.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Was there anything else, kind of just wrapping up, that we want to discuss on Expo West I've missed, or that you'd want to tell me about? Because again, they wouldn't allow me in, man. My media pass was denied. But maybe since we did this podcast, that they'll give us a free access, because we could do everything Expo West for them in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll pick on a couple things we've talked about. I have no idea how this would get arranged, and obviously, people do need to get paid to some degree, but right to the point of like trying to make it accessible for smaller brands. It would really fascinate me if there was a way to figure out, whether it's one of the seminars or it's just like an information booth in one of the halls where you go to, you're like, hey, I'm Joe. I have a brand and I think I need help with X thing. You just go, okay, Joe, like here's a list of 50 consultants, or here's a list of 50 people that would love to hear from you. They may or may not be able to help, but they can help piggyback or daisy chain you to others. Go, right? Again, total off the wall. That's not a fully formed thought. It's very much in its infancy, but like that to me is the value of going to those shows. And so like trying to formalize that a little bit to make it even more beneficial, I think would be really cool.
So if I can once again plug Naturally Network, I think that their showcase, which it was minority focused, but their showcase does do that because the brands that we saw at the minority showcase, they're too small for Expo West. They can't afford it, right? But the showcase is paid for by Naturally Network. It was at the Hilton that we talked about, and you just had to show up. You had a very basic booth, brought some product, and that was it. There was no big backdrop, none of that fancy stuff, right? But it also gave them the opportunity to be in front of buyers, investors, other service providers, and sort of give them the Expo West experience without being actually at Expo West. And there are other groups that do that as well, I think, that maybe I'm just not aware of, and maybe you're not aware of either, Adam. But seeking out those groups, because there are communities sort of, that want to help the brand succeed, right? So you have to seek out as a brand, especially as a new brand in such a competitive marketplace, you've got to seek out these communities.
I have a challenge for the three of us. Why don't we create a list that we could share with everybody here? Let's work together where people could plug into, like obviously the network you're part of, kind of here's who you call to get involved, because I don't think many people know, like I'm part of a group, I can't say the name, but it's with Deborah Brenner. And they have a group called Diversified Power Brands. It'd be interesting to actually introduce Deborah to you, Roger. She's part of the Women on the Vine and Spirits. She's just connected, but we do work with her as well. But to help these brands, these developing brands, what do you think about that challenge to
I
create
think
something like
that's a
that?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I also think I want to, Sam, I don't know if you know her, and I'm not sure if I still have her contact info, but if not, we could get it relatively quickly because we know a lot of the same people. Allison Hone, who is
Yeah.
the exactly. We should see if she's interested in joining us. Her or Kate LaBrosse, who is the interim director while Allison was on maternity leave. But those two women are just, I mean, they're wonderful people, but they're just forces in the networking space, especially in Minnesota. So it'd be cool to get them on and get their take on it.
Yeah. Yeah. You gave yourself an assignment. Go for it.
Perfect. I'll dig up an email for one or both of them.
All right. Well, I'll leave it to the two of you to have some closing remarks. It was just great to be back with the two of you. And Roger, you're always welcome. Come on every week if you want to join us. We enjoy you. And another topic, let's pick it and let's continue the conversation. But any closing
Absolutely.
remarks?
for all this not so much bad stuff we said about Expo West, but all the stuff that we can complain about, Expo West I think is still very much worth the trip. The networking opportunities, the just seeing what's new, what's hot. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this conversation talking about Expo West. So I'm looking forward to more.
No, I mean, again, having been very fortunate and being offered a ticket, I would say if you can afford it, whether to have a booth or to attend, and you truly take advantage of going and soaking it all in and learning and telling a good story and making good connections, it can mean we think about it, and this is the way I frame it in my mind of like, had I paid for the ticket, right? $4 grand, whatever it was, right? And the hotel and the flight and all the things. If I get one client out of that or one good relationship or one good connection, even if it doesn't pay off until years later, it paid for itself. So yeah, I mean, I think it was super fun show. I think it can still be very useful. But again, if a $4,000 price tag is outside of your budget at the moment, which is perfectly viable, right? Perfectly understandable, by all means, then seek out folks like the three of us or the Naturally Network or others, because there are other ways to still have that impact.
I love those takeaways. Thank you both for joining us today. If you could actually give me the contact information for your networks, Roger,
Absolutely.
Adam as well. I think we include that and we put this actually as a podcast. And thanks everyone for joining us this Saturday morning. I think we're going to have snow this coming week, Adam, in Minnesota. It's high of 40. It was in the 70s the last 2 days. Now it's winter's back.
I,
We'll try to
yeah.
survive. But thanks everybody for joining.
All right. Stay
Thanks,
warm,
guys.
you
Thanks,
guys.
Roger. Thanks, Sam.